Welcome to the Study Samurai webinar on how to support your students through high school. Our goal today is to help you reduce the pressure, stress and anxiety of secondary school for your students so that they can study and learn faster and easier. My name's Rocky Biasi.
And I'm Prue Salter.
I've been a secondary high school teacher and school counsellor currently in private practice for 18 years. I work with students and parents to help reduce stress and anxiety and improve well-being and academic performance.
I also started my career as a secondary teacher, but realised that so many students really don't know how to achieve academically. So my doctorate focused on how schools can help students with these study skills, and I've shared my tips and techniques with over 500,000 parents and students since 2001.
This webinar is a result of Prue and I both running sessions in schools, and many schools use our website and resources. In fact, your school might be one of these. But you can have all of the websites and all of the handouts you like. Nothing beats someone talking to you directly like this. People tell us that they want to see us and hear us speak and hear what we have to say, but we just simply can't get to every school for a live presentation. And even if we have done a presentation at your school, the students probably only got to hear us speak for an hour or so. But we've got so much more that we want to tell them.
And that's why we created the Study Samurai Library. Now there's 3 parts to this online resource. Firstly, there are 75 video lessons of Rocky and I teaching for about 20 minutes or so, telling your students everything they need to know to help them cope with the academic demands of secondary school. Then we've included the ELES Online Study Skills Handbook website with 43 interactive study skills units. And lastly, the Study Samurai Library also includes the Human Connections online wellbeing resource with 17 modules that help students increase wellbeing, reduce stress and anxiety. So this is all the resources your school needs to support your students. So in this webinar, we're going to give you a taste of the library for free. We'll cover content from 2 of the 75 video lessons. If you like what we show you, at the end of the webinar, we'll explain how you can access this resource for your school or for your family.
So let's get started. High school years are a challenging time for everyone involved because, well, firstly, students' developmental stage, they're becoming more independent, and how, we would influence them as children no longer works as they get older and start high school. Also, there's this cultural message that the senior years of school determine your future. And that adds a lot of unnecessary stress for good reason. The belief that it's do or die, no wonder the stakes are high for our students.
The workload in secondary school can be truly overwhelming. It's not normal life to have to work all day at school and then do more work at home, and to do that day in and day out. Unfortunately, the time of life when students least feel like doing work is the time when they have to do the most work ever.
So it's little wonder that fear, stress and anxiety are high in our students with that type of workload, and the high stakes do or die belief and thinking. In an article published in September 2015, there was a survey of Year 12 students from a range of schools in Sydney, Australia, and it didn't paint a happy picture of life for students. Of the 722 students surveyed, 42% registered high-level anxiety symptoms high enough to be of clinical concern. The proportion is nearly double the population norm and larger than earlier studies. Of the total survey group, 16% of students reported extreme and severe levels of anxiety, while 37% registered above average levels of stress. The consequence of being in this mental and emotional state is that what we fear most, we tend to create. That is, poor performance and lower than expected results. So what's most needed is, and what's often overlooked, is the critical part a healthy and growth-oriented mindset plays in mental health and performance. Rather than just saying work harder to students, we need to be focusing on what's called the happiness advantage. And this is from Shawn Achor, who's a world authority in positive psychology. He noticed that as a lecturer at Harvard, students most under pressure worked harder and performed worse when they didn't look after their own well-being. Instead, the students who were able to maintain a balance of work and wellness performed much better.
This means that students need to apply strategies and techniques to manage the demanding workload. But if they're not in the right headspace, then all the strategies and the technique in the world won't actually help them. Once they've got the right mindset, they can then start to implement strategies to help them work smarter. The research shows that you need both mindset and specific study strategies to flourish through high school and life after school.
That's why The resources in the online Study Samurai library address how to deal with mindset, well-being and mental health concerns, as well as teaching students study skills and time management techniques. Once students have the right mindset for success and they actually know what they need to do, then their confidence and well-being increase, and this creates optimal performance. And that's why mindset is one of the 2 topics we're going to cover in this webinar from the 75 video lessons.
As so many parents are concerned about technology, the other topic we'll cover in this webinar from our list of topics is managing technology as a distraction. But don't forget, the 75 video lessons are only the first part of the 3 online resources that you'll find in the Study Samurai library.
The second resource in the Study Samurai library is Dr. Salter's Online Study Skills Handbook website. And the good news is that if you've already subscribed to that site, then you only pay half price to upgrade to the full Study Samurai library. This basically gives you 3 online resources for the price of 2.
The third part of the Study Samurai library is the online wellbeing resource developed by Rocky here, with 17 modules to help reduce stress, anxiety and increase wellbeing.
Just to let you know, we'll be emailing you a copy of the slides in the next 24 hours of this webinar, but make sure you stay right to the end of the webinar to find out how you can access an amazing deal that we're offering today for the Study Samurai library.
And if you have any burning questions during this webinar, feel free to put them in the question box. These will be emailed to us so we can get back to you.
I want you to take a moment and think. What's the hardest part for you about supporting your students through high school? Let me tell you about an experience Prue and I shared, and it's a really interesting case study. It's Michelle's story. Often Prue and I run joint student development days for schools. I have half of the group, Prue then has the other half, and we swap. And in the break we meet and often compare notes about students and how they're going. Every now and then a student stands out, either because they actively seek our help, or after the session we notice that what we were talking about is really resonating with them, and Michelle was one of these students.
Rocky didn't show up in the break time, and that was no big deal. Often we're fielding phone calls, we've got students who want some personal help. So I started my next session. I found that there was a student there who looked like she'd been crying. Throughout my session, I couldn't help but notice how focused she was. She was hanging on my every word. Although she didn't ask any questions, she was really listening intently, scribbling madly in a booklet. At the end, she came up and asked if it was okay if she emailed me her study notes of feedback, and of course I told her it was no problem. Debriefing afterwards, I mentioned to Rocky that there was this girl who had seemed quite upset.
And I immediately knew who Prue was talking about, as she'd been with me during the break time. She had stayed back after the session and said that she just felt so anxious all the time. She felt like the anxiety was paralyzing her. Each afternoon she would sit and stare at her desk, but just couldn't seem to make herself actually do any of the work. She was falling more and more behind, but couldn't break the pattern, and it was having a major impact on her both at school and at home. After talking with Michelle, I found that much of her fear came from anxiety, from believing that she was not smart enough to get the results that she wanted, and felt that everyone else around her seemed to know what to do, but she seemed to have no idea. The fear was paralyzing her. I noticed one of her core beliefs was that she was just not smart enough, and her constant focus on the future and what results she'd need to achieve created a whole bunch of stress and anxiety, and this negatively affected her focus and concentration when she was trying to study. So I helped her see that this type of fixed mindset perspective was her problem, and that what she needed was a growth mindset view and a perspective. That is, to focus on the here and now, what she needs to get done and what she needs to do to improve. Now, Michelle left the sessions with 2 action plans, which were really exciting to see. The things that she wanted to implement from my session were focused around mindset, and these were to use the word yet. We'll talk about these later in the webinar. Also, feedback around improvement and reframing this notion of failure and mistake as not personal, but really feedback about how to improve.
When she asked me about sending study notes, she showed me her action plan for my session, which was to create a study timetable for next term and to use the holidays to get her study notes completely up to date. I was thrilled that Michelle did actually send me her study notes, and we found ways to improve them as well. Now, while she didn't get completely up to date, she was 90% there by the end of the holidays, feeling very positive about her achievements. In one of her emails, she told me to tell Rocky that she was actually able to use some of the relaxation strategies to help her focus on what she could control in the present rather than worry about the future. So it was great to really see her, just with that little bit of feedback from us,
that's right,
really develop that growth mindset.
Now, do you notice many students like Michelle, either in your teaching or perhaps as a parent? Now that we've looked at some of the difficulties facing students in high school, the next step is to try to address these. Obviously, different students have different concerns, and the Study Samurai Library gives you resources that you need to work with the students in both the academic area and the area of mindset and well-being. The two topics we have chosen to cover in this webinar are technology and mindset. So let's just start with technology, and I'll hand over to Prue.
Okay, thanks, Rocky. So let's look at one of our topic areas today, something that's often a major bone of contention, which is the issue of technology. How can technology help rather than hinder? I constantly meet parents, teachers, and students who are frustrated by technology. Parents and teachers feel like students are just wasting too much time on games, social media, texting, just general time wasting, surfing. Some students also feel frustrated with themselves. They want to have some control, but they can't seem to find it in themselves. This can lead to enormous conflict, where parents and teachers are constantly nagging, students get angry, and it's just a source of continual conflict both at school and at home. The result, students fall behind their schoolwork. They're stressed about what they haven't done, and they're angry with themselves for not being able to be disciplined, and the results start to suffer. But when students learn to control their technology, and the use of technology rather than have the technology control them, they start to feel a real sense of achievement. At home, instead of conflict, there's family agreement. It creates harmonious household with better understanding between everyone as to how and when technology will be used. At school, students can stay on top of their workload, stay in control, and cope better with the academic demands of school. Now, there's three components to the managing technology model, and you'll see these on the screen. We're going to look at each of these three in detail. The first one's about making a decision, second one's about drawing a line in the sand, and lastly, using technology to actually help. So if we talk about the first one, looking at making a decision, choosing how much time to allocate to schoolwork. Now, every school is going to be different. They'll have different guidelines. Look in the school diary, school handbook, ask your teachers, but I'll just give you some general guidelines because sometimes people don't like to actually say. So in the first few years of high school, students are usually doing at least half an hour to an hour each day. In many schools, they're saying around about an hour to an hour and a half on average. So that's about 7 to 10 hours of schoolwork over the whole week. The middle years of high school, it should be at least an hour. In many schools, the average can be up to an hour and a half to 2 hours or 10 to 14 hours over the whole week. But to be honest, I think if you can get your 9, 10 students doing around about an hour a day, that's pretty good. The senior years, the workload really starts to increase. To start off with, it won't be too bad, but they'll be doing around about an hour and a half to 2 hours a day. This will increase as students approach the end of their schooling. So most students in the year 11 years are doing around 2 to 3 hours per day, which is about 14 to 21 hours over the whole week. And in year 12, around 3 to 4 hours a day. That's like 21 to 28 hours over the whole week. So the first thing you need to do is have a conversation with your students and make it very clear what exactly is the right amount of time. What are the expectations? What works for both of us? Because there needs to be agreement. If your idea of what they should be doing is very different to their idea, that causes a problem. So schools need to communicate this to their students. These are our expectations. They need to tell the parents so parents know, and parents can have that conversation with their child as well. So you might have students who say, but I don't actually have any work to do. I don't have an hour worth of schoolwork. There's actually two types of schoolwork, and this is one of the little secrets to doing well. The first type is compulsory work, homework, assessments, preparing for assignments, whatever it might be. But if they finish all of that, the expectation in high school is that they then say, okay, I've got no homework. What else could I do to help me understand what I'm learning? We call this independent learning work. It's about saying, I need to step up and take some responsibility. I could go back over things I found difficult, make some study notes now rather than wait till exam time, do extra questions on things I'm finding difficult. So it's very important both for schools and parents to have these conversations with students, firstly around how much schoolwork they should be doing, and secondly, what types of things they should be doing in that time. So that's the first part of our model. The second part of the model is that we need to draw a line in the sand. That means we need to separate schoolwork time and personal time. So we need to educate students on the importance of doing this, keeping schoolwork time and personal time completely separate. Now, I think a very simple approach And this is if your student's not too busy. They don't have a whole lot of extracurricular activities. Very simple, as we say, we're going to work in half-hour blocks. In that half hour, no TV, no phone, we learn to focus a half an hour. If they cannot concentrate for a whole half hour, then make it 20 minutes to start with. So we've decided how much time we're going to allocate to schoolwork. If it's an hour per day, then I'm going to do 2 half-hour blocks every day. Half an hour when I go home, half an hour before dinner. They'll still get 5 hours or so to themselves. Senior students might be a bit different. If they've got 7 hours to play with, they might do an hour and a half when they first get home, have a break, another half hour before dinner, another half hour after dinner. They've done 2.5 hours worth of schoolwork. They've still had over 4 hours to themselves. If your student is super busy though, if they're someone who's got a lot of sport, a lot of activities, a lot of things going on in their life, this will not work for them. If they're really busy, I highly recommend that you encourage your students to think about doing a timetable. Don't call it a study timetable because that will turn them off completely. The way you frame is you say, okay, well, let's see what your life is like. Let's fill in all the activities, all the things you do. Here's what your life is like. Now let's fit in the schoolwork. This one that I'm showing you on the screen was actually a Year 11 boy who emailed me and he said, I go to the gym a lot. I play a lot of sport. I can't possibly fit in my schoolwork. What should I do? So I said, well, let's try a timetable. He said, oh, it won't work. A few weeks later, he emailed me and he said, I can't believe it. He said, firstly, my parents have completely stopped nagging me. They can see I've got a plan. Secondly, he said, I'm actually getting a solid amount of work done, but I'm still having my life. I'm going to the gym. I'm playing my sport. He said, and because I'm focusing in those half hours, I'm getting so much more done. I cannot stress enough for students who have lots of activities, very busy, a timetable is the only way to go because otherwise life will take over and you'll find that you just don't get the work done. So we've made a decision. We've clarified how much schoolwork students should be doing. We've discussed that with the students so we're all on the same page. We've drawn a line in the sand. We've said we're going to keep schoolwork and personal life separate. We're going to stop doing work with our phone there. We're not saying no phone, no technology for the whole night. We're saying during that half-hour block, just focus on schoolwork. Now, the last one is for people who don't have the self-discipline and they can use the technology to help them. And these are some blocking tools. If your son or daughter, if your students in your school are easily distracted by all of these things on the web, then the best way for them to manage this is, of course, to have some self-control. If they don't have any, the good news is they can now actually download it. There's a program called Self-Control. Now, students in the school told me about this and they said it made their life so much easier. First one's some Mac computers. It's free. PC version is called Cold Turkey, also free. What students do is add in all the websites they're addicted to. Then they move the slider across for how long they want to block themselves out. And here's the nice thing. They can't get back into those websites until it counts down. Restarting their computer doesn't work. They can't uninstall it while it's counting down. It's a very clever piece of software. They can also choose to block out the whole web as well. But this is good because it actually empowers students rather than you switching off the wireless network, which some parents end up needing to resort to, or putting the phone in a locked drawer. This allows students to actually do that. Now, what about the phone? If your son or daughter has an Android phone, there's a very good app called Stay Focused. It allows you to block yourself out of other apps. If they have an iPhone, unfortunately, Apple does not allow one app to block another app. So there's nothing like this for the iPhone. I used to think the best thing to do is to switch the phone off and put it out of sight. For most students, that is the best thing to do. But if the students at your school suffer from what we call eye disorder, for example, they go to sleep and the first thing they do is as soon as they wake up is they check their phone. Or if they leave the house, they don't have their phone, they're anxious the whole day. Dr. Larry Rosen found that for these students, surprisingly, trying to just put the phone and resist it completely didn't work because the brain was still thinking and obsessing about the technology. So what he found is the students can take their phone, set an alarm for every 10 to 15 minutes, put on silent face down. Because they can see it, there's no separation anxiety. When the alarm goes off, they have a quick tech break, check, put it back again. I thought that's not going to work. Students are going to stay on their phone, but they found 3 things happen. Firstly, students were able to increase the time before they need to check. Overall, they spent way less time on their phone, and whole sections of the brain that were previously thinking about the technology were now focusing on the work. It was a really interesting study. For the die-hard students, if you have students who think they're not even going to be able to resist waiting for 15 minutes, you might have to use what we call and there are lots of other programs out there, of course, you can try. You'll see some of those on the screen when you get the slides. But for those die-hard students, you may have to try the K-Safe. Now, I use this for managing my chocolate addiction, but it's really good for technology as well. So the students can place their phone into the plastic tub, they spin the dial, hit the thing, and they say, right, don't open for half an hour, whatever it might be. Their phone's there, nice and safe, they can't see it, but it means that there's no possibility of checking the phone during that time. So some students might need that little bit of extra help from technology to actually manage the technology. So 3 things to help students manage technology, whether you're a parent or whether you're a teacher working in school. And I think it's really important for schools to take a lead on this, to make it very clear how much time should students be doing and what should they be doing. We need to communicate to students that they have to draw a line in the sand, keep schoolwork time and personal time separate, and teach them about the types of tools that are around, and new ones will come up all the time to actually help them manage that technology. Now, I also want to tell you a little bit of a case study about a parent that I was helping out whose son was highly addicted to gaming, year 11 boy. And she found that he just was getting absolutely no work done, failing his assessments. It was just a nightmare. He just spent all his time gaming. So she tried all sorts of things, but it's hard when they're in year 11 and they've got a part-time job and they've got their own money, they can get their own Wi-Fi plan. Those sorts of things cause lots of problems. So we had a conversation around, okay, we have to get these 3 things clear. So she decided to use the car, which is always a wonderful strategy for parents because you've got a captive audience. The other thing with this, with working with students too, and again, whether you're a parent working with students in school or a parent working with your own son or daughter or a teacher, helping parents to manage these issues at home, because of course the parents come to the school, who else can they ask for help? I think it's really important to stress that we need to give the students time to process this. We can't expect them to take it all on board straight away. So the idea was to start having conversations with the student. So talking about, let's have a just chat about how much time. So 2-pronged approach. The school made it very clear what the expectations were for year 11. And then the mum said, let's have a conversation around that. How much time is realistic for you? This kid was not prepared to do 3 hours a night at this point in time. Okay, that's fine. He's only in year 11 for now. Let's aim for an hour and a half. So he agreed, yep, I reckon I can do an hour and a half. The next conversation came into the next part, which was drawing a line in the sand. So there's a discussion around how we're actually going to allocate this time. Do you want to have a timetable? Do you want to do all the schoolwork first and then do the gaming? Do you want to come home and get straight into gaming, then have a break from that? So rather than imposing on the student what you think is the best thing for them, it's coming to an agreement, giving them options, letting them think about what works for them, because different things work for different people. The last stage was to talk about using some of those blocking tools used during that time. So actually saying, okay, we're going to block out those gaming websites just for that half hour at a time so you're not tempted. And I think because, you can't change it overnight, but giving students, educating students about the process, the strategies and tools makes an enormous difference. So I'd like you just to take a moment to consider what has been your biggest struggle with getting a balance with technology for your students. What have been the things that have really you've found difficult in helping students use technology as a tool, but not let it become a major distraction? I guess one of the things that the whole purpose of this webinar is to get you think about, how can we do things a bit differently? We need to make some decisions. Are we going to keep doing it the same old way? Constantly punishing students, fighting with them about things and just not getting anywhere? Or are we going to try something different? And that's what the Study Samurai Library is about. It's about giving you tools so that you can take the information from our expertise and use that to help your students find a new way, find a new path. So that's our technology topic. Now, there's lots of things that both parents and students can do, of course, to help students manage technology in their lives. We just want to give you a taste in this webinar. But you have to know the options and you have to know how to frame it in the right way to students. So I'm going to pass over to Rocky now so he can talk about our second topic, which is all about the success mindset.
Okay, well, thanks, Prue. What I want to talk to you about is the fixed and growth mindset. You see, some students are highly motivated and others just aren't as motivated. And there are, of course, many reasons students don't try that hard or aren't that motivated. And over the last few decades, a lot of research has shown that there's a powerful relationship between a student's mindset and their achievement. These beliefs have a big impact on a student's motivation, academic behaviours, for example, studying and asking for help, and how they respond to challenge and setbacks, and also their academic achievement. So this work originated from Carol Dweck, as a professor at Stanford University, and she discovered that there are two mindsets. The fixed mindset believes that intelligence is a fixed trait. You can't change it. And the growth mindset person believes that you can grow your intelligence through your effort and your approach. When you have a fixed view of your ability, you tend to quit easily because you just don't believe that you can improve. Students with a fixed mindset, they turn mistakes and failure into who they are, their identity. And rather than seeing mistakes as information about how to grow and improve, the belief that you're not good enough, not smart enough, and perhaps a failure creates fear and massive self-doubt. And this mental and emotional state, when you're in that, you're more likely to avoid school and study. This creates a vicious self-perpetuating cycle because procrastinating and avoiding schoolwork means that your results suffer. When your results suffer, the fixed mindset student believes that this is about their innate natural ability rather than their capacity to grow and improve. Why would the fixed mindset student try to improve if they believe that their results mean that they're a failure and there's really no hope of improving? So students with a growth mindset, this helps create character traits like determination and grit and resilience. And these traits are proven to increase results and well-being. A growth mindset views failure and mistakes as an opportunity to learn and grow and how to get better and how to improve. And there's a distinct difference between the fixed and fixed and growth mindset student. The fixed mindset student will focus on the results that they've achieved, whilst the growth mindset student pays much more attention to feedback they've received and how to improve. So this is one of the strategies peak performers use. They push themselves past their comfort zone and almost celebrate mistakes as it points them in the right direction to improve their results. There are 3 consequences to the fixed and growth mindset. Your mindset affects the goals that you have, how you view effort, and how you respond to failure and setbacks. So let's go through these. So first of all, for students with a fixed mindset, their goal in school is to show how smart they are, or hide their perceived weaknesses. This makes the student much less likely to ask questions in class or seek out help from peers or teachers because that would involve showing they don't know something. Students with a growth mindset, on the other hand, their goal is to learn. So they're much more likely to ask questions if they don't understand, or to seek out help and try a new strategy if they're struggling. So let's have a look at some of the inner dialogue when it comes to this. Students with a fixed mindset are much more likely to agree with, the main thing I want when I do my schoolwork is to show how good I'm at it. Whereas students with a growth mindset are much more likely to agree with, it's much more important for me to learn things in my classes than it is to get the best grades. What about effort? Well, students with a fixed mindset actually see effort as proof of low ability. They think that if they have to try hard, that means they're not very good at it and not very smart. Whereas students with a growth mindset, they see effort as an important factor to learning and performance. And so this is how those beliefs play out for fixed mindset students. They're more likely to agree with, to tell you the truth, when I work hard at my schoolwork, it makes me feel like I'm not very smart. Whereas students with a growth mindset are much more likely to agree with, the harder you work at something, the better you'll be at it. What about responses to failure? Well, a fixed mindset student, they give up and quit because they see setbacks as evidence they don't have what it takes. They see it as a character flaw. Students with a growth mindset are more likely to work harder in response to failure. As a result, their grit, their ability to persevere through difficulty, increases in strength. It's a little bit like a muscle. The more it's used, the stronger the belief and attitude and determination grows. So some of the dialogue, when students are asked how they would respond to failing a test, students with a fixed mindset are more likely to agree with these types of statements. I'd spend less time on this subject from now on, I would try not to take this subject ever again, and I would try to cheat on the next test. Whereas students with a growth mindset are much more likely to agree with, I'd work harder in this class from now on, and I'd spend more time studying for that subject and for the upcoming tests. So students with a fixed mindset tend to show declines in their performance over time, particularly when they transition to a new environment, such as from primary school to high school and into the senior school. Students with a growth mindset typically show increases in achievement over time. So when it comes to creating a growth mindset, there are 3 strategies that I'd like you to consider. The first is to use the word yet. So Dr. Dweck believes that this single word, whilst it's not magic, can transform the way we view our problems. Our current condition isn't good, but we're in the direction of progress. The word actually fosters the idea that we're growing and improving. So it typically works like this. So when I hear my daughter say, "But I just can't do this," I say, "Yes, you just can't do this yet." What about feedback? This is really critically important. Students need to seek out and analyze the feedback their teachers and coaches provide and implement that feedback to improve. Growth mindset students are constantly looking for and applying the tips and feedback they receive. Parents and teachers need to provide feedback focused on process and character traits that are in the student's control. You can say things like, "I really loved that strategy you used on that problem," or "I loved your work ethic in that practice," or "I love how honest you are with your friends," or "I really loved how hard you tried." When we affirm effort and the right choice of strategy within the student's control, we tend to get more effort and improved performance. Finally, this is also really important, learning from failure and not seeing it as a reflection of who you are. The message we should be sending and teaching is acknowledge and embrace mistakes and imperfections. Hiding from weaknesses means that you'll never overcome it or improve. Replace the word failing for learning. Don't make failure personal. It's not about who you are. It's more about information about your ability and effort at that time. So this is a photo of my daughter, Kane, that you'll see up on the slide here. And this is of her a few years ago. She came back from school with this trophy. She came first in a cross-country run. And I wanted to just share with you really quickly this case study of where I try to give her feedback around the growth mindset. So initially, of course, she came in and she was super excited. She was saying, "Hey, Daddy, look, I've got this trophy. I came first in cross-country." And, of course, I picked her up, gave her a big hug and said, "Oh, that's fantastic. I'm really proud of you." And she was making a really big deal about the trophy and coming first. She was holding it up and saying, "I was the best, I came first." And she was saying all of this sort of stuff. And I thought, well, this is a really good opportunity to teach her about growth mindset. So I said, "Show me that trophy." So I picked it up, I looked at it, and I dropped my tone and my enthusiasm, and I just put the trophy down and I said, "Look, darling, to be quite honest, I'm not that fussed about the trophy." And her face dropped and she said, "But Dad." And I said, No, let me explain. So tell me, when you were running, was it hard? Was it hard to do? And she goes, "Yeah." And it was really hard. I said, was it hard to breathe? She said, "Dad, I had a stitch." And I said, "Well, what about your muscles and, in your legs? How did you go?" And she said, "Yeah, well, they were hurting, but, she just kept running, And then I said to her, "What about your friends?" And I said, "Did they stop or walk?" And she said, "Well, some of them did." And then I picked up the enthusiasm in my tone and I just said to her, "You see, I'm not that fussed about the trophy, but I'm super excited about what you did. It was really hard to breathe at times as you were running. Your muscles were sore. Some of your friends dropped off and you persevered. You kept going no matter how hard it was." So my feedback was on what she did to achieve the result rather than the result. So this leads us to a question. Can you identify the fixed and growth mindset in yourself and in your students? We all have them, and Carol Dweck says that about 40% of the population has a fixed mindset, 40% growth, and 20% in the middle. And by the way, you should also know that the fixed and growth mindset can change. You might have a fixed mindset at school and a growth mindset to sport, music, so it changes across contexts. So some things for you to reflect on. Can you recognize the fixed and growth mindset in yourself or your students? And how can you understand, and how can an understanding of these mindsets help your students? So just like Prue said before, the whole webinar, the whole purpose of this is to look at some new approaches and some new perspectives and ways of going ahead. And it's really about embracing the growth mindset research and to leave that fixed mindset view of the world behind us. So to summarize, we need to help our students develop a growth mindset that has a focus on continual improvement through the right effort and strategy.
So we've now finished covering some of the key ideas in the mindset and technology topics.
So we created the Study Samurai Library to give parents and teachers an all-in-one resource to help students not just cope with the demands of school, but to be more relaxed and less stressed about their learning.
This helps your students develop grit, resilience, and new learning skills so that they can achieve their personal academic best.
The Study Samurai Library is a resource that gives you access to our expert knowledge so that you can use it with your students. For example, parents and students can access the Study Samurai Library of resources at home or get the tips and techniques they individually need. Schools can integrate the resources into their pastoral and wellbeing programs and learning to learn programs. And teachers could direct individual students to the resources that they need.
Well, this is not a magic wand that will do all the work for you. It is an incredible library of resources that gives you a massive head start in allowing you to tailor your programs to meet the needs of your students, both in study skills and in mindset and wellbeing.
And we've done all the hard work creating these resources for you. All you need to do as a school is to decide what topics you want to cover with particular cohorts.
The Study Samurai Library is a culmination of over 20 years' experience from 2 experts in study skills, learning, wellbeing and performance. Both Rocky and I have presented our materials to over 500,000 students, parents and teachers since 2001. These are tried and tested resources.
So let me explain the model behind the Study Samurai Library. There are 5 key topic areas. When students have well-being, they create energy and motivation. And when they have a growth and success mindset, they can then implement time management strategies to become organised, efficient and productive, as well as study skills to make their learning easier. This then leads to positive performance and students achieving their personal best.
At the start of the webinar, we said we'd tell you how you can access a special offer to use the Study Samurai Library with your school.
The special limited offer for schools is subscribe now for this year and pay only 50% of the usual subscription fee.
So you can see on the screen there's a number of pricing options. There's a family price if your school doesn't subscribe to the Study Samurai Library, and there's also options for schools based on your secondary school enrolment numbers. For most schools, this works out at only around $2 per student to access all 3 of those online resources.
So, the special limited offer for schools, subscribe now for this year and pay only 50% of the usual subscription fee.
So to subscribe to the family or the school package options, just go to www.studysamurai.com/program. The web address you can see there on the screen.
This is our life's work and it's been helping young people. And if you have any questions, simply just put them in the chat box and they will be emailed to us.
Or you can email us using the email address on the screen, info@studysamurai.com. Thanks again for attending our webinar, and don't forget we will email you a link so you can access all the slides. We look forward to sharing our wealth of knowledge in the Study Samurai Library with you and with your students.
Thanks and bye for now.